Returning home early after a half-month business trip, I thought I'd give my wife and daughter a surprise. Yet, I heard my 4-year-old daughter say to my wife, "Mom, between my two dads, I like Daddy G. Boda more. Can I go to the amusement park with him again next time?" Through the crack of the door, I saw my wife, usually so cold towards me, tap my daughter's nose playfully and say with a smile, "Of course you can. After all, he's your real dad." But G. Boder, he was my wife's first love from her youth, a love as soft as moonlight. The paternity test results came in. I smoked several cigarettes, but couldn't bring myself to open and look at the results. Not until my secretary, Su Young, knocked and came in, wrinkling her nose at the strong smell of smoke in my office, did I realize how lost in emotion I had been. Yuli Group's project has been secured. She handed me a thick stack of documents. I snapped back to reality. "Leave them there," I said. "I'll sign them in a bit." Su Young nodded and left. I wiped my face, gently opened that paternity test document, and the result showed. The little girl I had cherished for 4 years, Ann, was truly not my own. With that, a tiny speck of dust settled, and oddly, I felt no more conflict or sadness, just a sense of calm. Thinking back, there had been signs all along. A few years ago, my wife, Liu Ryan, usually distant toward me, had made a candlelight dinner out of the blue. We drank vintage red wine, and in a haze of passion, I forgot any precautions. But Liu Ryan, who normally hated unprotected moments, didn't scold me at all. Instead, she calmly said, "It's my safe period." In fact, she even began treating me with a newfound gentleness. I was pleasantly surprised, and what shocked me even more was that the woman who didn't want children became pregnant. She even told me she wanted to keep the baby. On the day she gave birth, she had a difficult labor, and I swore I'd never let her suffer through childbirth again. So I volunteered to get a vasectomy. Looking back now, I realize how naive I was. Liu Ryan clearly knew whose child it was. She only wanted to have the child of her moonlit first love. If it weren't for last week when I returned early from my business trip and overheard our daughter innocently talking about her two dads, I might still be living under Liu Ryan's deception. The story between Liu Ryan and me is probably just another tale of an arranged marriage among prominent families. Her family's company hit a difficult spot, unable to pull through, so they reached out to my parents. The only difference was that I had secretly loved Liu Ryan for a long time. I always knew Liu Ryan didn't love me. She had a first love, a moonlit romance that ended when he left the country. Marrying me was purely to solve her family's crisis. After we got married, she was always cold toward me. I thought I could win her over with my sincerity, that with enough time, she would feel my love. After Annan was born, we grew even closer. I thought I had melted the heart of this distant beauty, bringing her down from her pedestal. But reality slapped me hard in the face. It's been 5 years since our marriage, and even my daughter knows she has another father. Liu Ryan just watched coldly as I walked deeper into this pathetic illusion. To her, I must look ridiculous, don't I? My phone vibrated. A rare message from Liu Ryan. "I heard from Su Yang that you're back from your trip. Why haven't you come home? Annan has been asking for her dad these past few days." A bitter smile crept onto my lips. Last week, I'd come home hoping to surprise mother and daughter. But instead, the surprise was mine. Facing something like this, no man could stay calm right away. I didn't want to argue with Liu Ryan in front of Annan, so I quietly left home and stayed close to the office. It's been a week now, and she's just now realizing I'm back from my trip? That night, despite my anger, I still messaged her, telling her I'd be busy for a while, and staying near the office was more convenient. Liu Ryan probably didn't even notice. Or rather, if she saw the notification, She just swiped it away, without bothering to look closely at the content. Thinking about this, a wave of exhaustion washed over me. Was it wrong of me to try to force love in this business marriage? For the first time, I didn't respond to Liu Ryan's message. She has never had much patience with me. When I didn't respond, she quickly called me. As soon as I picked up, her tone was accusatory. "Hey Kong, did you not see my message? Sorry, I was working overtime. Overtime. Do you even remember that you have a family? Anne has been asking for her dad every day. Are you being fair to your daughter?" I was silent. In truth, I wanted to ask Liu Ryan as well if she remembered that she was a married woman. If she remembered that Anne wasn't even my biological child. But looking at the family photo on my desk, I held my tongue. Anne is sick. She wants pastries from Hideji. Bring them to the hospital. She coldly dropped the words and then hung up. A moment later, she sent the location, thinking of Anne's sweet face, the way she calls me dad. My heart softened again. After all, she's the daughter I personally raised since she was a baby. So I drove to Hideji and bought the custard buns and chicken feet that Anne loves. I rushed to the hospital. As I approached the hospital room, I heard Anne's clear voice. "Daddy G. Boder." Anne was very brave today and took her medicine obediently. I paused in my tracks and looked inside. I saw a young man in a white coat smiling gently. It was none other than Liu Ryan's first love, G. Boder, her moonlit romance. He affectionately patted Anne's head. "My sweet girl." Liu Ryan stood to the side, watching his interaction with Anne, a gentle expression on her face. In the 5 years we've been married, I had never seen such a look on her face. The three of them in the hospital room looked so harmonious, as if they were the true family of three. Perhaps that's exactly right, because in terms of blood, they are indeed the real family, aren't they? My chest felt stuffed, like thick cotton was blocking it. And I felt like the biggest fool, rushing to the hospital with pastries from Hideji. My whole body felt numb. My feet seemed glued to the ground. I stood at the door, not knowing whether to enter or not. It was G. Boda who noticed me first. He raised his brows behind his gold-rimmed glasses. "He Kong." He called my name, and at that, Liu Ryan's gentle expression immediately turned cold. She turned her head and looked at me, her gaze indifferent. "Why are you only here now?" She noticed the Hideji bag in my hand, her lips pressing together slightly. G. Boda already brought Anne dinner. So, the snacks I waited in a long line to buy, Anne's favorites, were no longer needed. Liu Ryan knew perfectly well how hard it was to get Hideji takeout. G. Boda smiled, trying to smooth things over. Anne didn't eat much today. She could have this as a midnight snack. The moment Anne heard midnight snack, she clapped her hands excitedly. "I want a midnight snack." Liu Ryan shook her head disapprovingly. "No, you can't eat anything after brushing your teeth at night, or you'll get cavities," Liu Ryan said. But G. Boda replied, "She's still young. Growing up. She should eat as much as she wants. I still think Anne is too thin." Liu Ryan looked at G. Boda helplessly. "You spoil her too much." Anne, ever perceptive, caught onto her mother's softened tone and cheered. Though I had already stepped into the room, I still felt like an outsider, unable to get a word in. G. Boda, seeing that Liu Ryan had relented, smiled and reached out his hand toward me, offering to take the bag of snacks from my hand. "He Kong, give it to me," he said, with the ease of someone assuming authority, as if he were the head of this family, as if he were Liu Ryan's husband. There was a look of challenge in G. Boda's eyes. He knew very well that if I had been the one to suggest this to Liu Ryan, she would never have agreed. When it came to raising Anne, she wouldn't tolerate me contradicting her. A surge of uncontrollable anger rose within me. From the moment I stepped into this hospital room, Liu Ryan hadn't given me a single kind look, and Jiboda subtly asserted his presence. Even Anan hadn't called me dad once on her own. I began to reflect on myself, wondering if I'd been too submissive all along, to the point where Liu Ryan felt she could trample over me. Not only did she let me raise her first love Jiboda's child, but she didn't even try to hide her preference right in front of me. Did she really think I was a pushover, someone she could manipulate so easily? I stared at Jiboda's outstretched hand, his fingers distinct and poised, and suddenly let out a cold laugh. Then I tossed the heated G-bag straight into the trash. No need, if she's already had dinner. Why bother with a midnight snack? Both Jiboda and Liu Ryan were stunned. The first to react was Anan. Seeing her promised midnight snack thrown into the trash, she burst out in protest, crying, "I want my midnight snack. Daddy's mean. I hate Daddy." Liu Ryan scolded me sharply. "He Kong, have you lost your mind?" Jiboda quickly picked up Anan, trying to soothe her. "It's okay, Anan. Don't worry. Daddy G will go get you more snacks. Don't cry." Anan sobbed in his arms, waving her little hands in the air. "Daddy's bad. I don't want Daddy He. I only want Daddy Jiboda," Liu Ryan said coldly. "Anan is already sick. Do you have no sense of responsibility as a father?" I looked at Liu Ryan, and for the first time, her coldly beautiful face appeared utterly detestable. Me, lacking a father's responsibility? Isn't there a perfect candidate for that right here? She reflexively frowned, preparing to lash out at me, but stopped short when she met my gaze. "You three make a great family. Don't force the role of father on me." Leaving those words, I saw Liu Ryan's face change drastically. I turned and walked away, not expecting Liu Ryan to actually follow me. At the elevator, she caught up to me. She reached out, grabbing my arm, breathing heavily. "He Kong, what did you mean just now? Why are you acting crazy?" I stopped, turned to face her, and asked back, "What about you? Are you feeling guilty?" She was speechless for a moment, then scoffed coldly. "Guilty of what? I'm the one asking you. What nonsense were you spouting just now? Even now?" She was stubbornly refusing to admit anything, still wanting to make me the fool. "Let's get a divorce." Suddenly, I found it all meaningless. I should have asked for a divorce the moment I received the paternity test results, instead of clinging to thoughts of Anan, or hoping Liu Ryan might feel a sliver of kindness toward me. I came here only to humiliate myself. Liu Ryan's face froze. "Divorce? What's the point of bringing up divorce out of the blue?" I spoke softly. "Liu Ryan, you may not realize it, but I know you better than you think. If you hadn't done anything wrong, if you had a clear conscience, you wouldn't have followed me out here." Her face turned pale in an instant. I could feel her fingers trembling slightly as they held onto my arm. I shook my head with a smile, pried her hand off, and stepped into the elevator. As the doors were closing, I saw her lips move, as if she wanted to say something, but no words came out. Returning to the large apartment downtown, I quickly packed my things. 5 years of marriage, and the belongings I bought for myself were pitifully few. One suitcase was enough to fit everything. Dragging my suitcase back to my place, I noticed that Liu Ryan had called me multiple times. When I didn't answer, she sent several messages. "He Kong, did someone say something to you? Are you serious about the divorce? Think it through. Our marriage isn't just about us. It's about the Liu and He families too." Reading this, I couldn't help but mock myself. I thought she chased after me out of at least some guilt. Turns out she was just worried I'd found out something that could impact our family's partnership. But why should I care? Years ago, I married her and used the He family's resources to save the Liu family from bankruptcy. I did it because I loved her. Through these years, I prioritized our family alliance. in every decision involving the Liu family. And what did I get in return? A wife who only treated me kindly when she felt like it. And a child who isn't even mine. Did they really think they could just use me as a convenient fool? I didn't reply to Liu Ryan's messages. Instead, I contacted my lawyer and asked him to draft a divorce agreement as soon as possible. The lawyer was efficient, sending me the draft the very next day. I gave it a quick look, saw no issues, and sent it to Liu Ryan directly. Not long after, her call came through. How ironic! In the past 5 years of marriage, she had reached out to me less frequently than she had in just these past 2 days. He Kong, you're really serious about this? I could hear the anger in her voice. Perhaps surprised that I would actually go through with filing for divorce. As you can see, I'm not joking. I told her, once we're divorced, there's no turning back. Her tone was resolute, as if she was certain I'd regret the divorce, even though I had already decided to part ways. Hearing that certainty in her voice still gave me a pang of sadness. That confidence she had, it was probably because she knew I loved her. But, knowing how deeply I felt for her, she still chose to trample over my feelings. I tilted my head, blinking. Liu Ryan, giving the position of husband to Ji Boater. Is that so wrong? Stop spouting nonsense. You're insufferable. She was both angry and embarrassed, and immediately hung up the phone. I thought she would quickly sign the divorce agreement, but surprisingly, there was no response from her end. On the weekend, my parents rarely asked me to come home for dinner. I thought about it, realizing I should let them know about the divorce with Liu Ryan, so I went back. But the moment I stepped inside, I saw Liu Ryan's parents chatting happily with my own parents, and Liu Ryan unusually was busy in the kitchen with the housekeeper. Annan was playing with toys, and when she saw me come in, her face lit up with joy as she called out, "Daddy." I stopped in my tracks. That single daddy from Annan interrupted all the conversation in the room. My parents and Liu Ryan's parents turned their heads toward me in unison, seeing the setup before me. It was clear to me what was going on. Liu Ryan must have already spoken to them. She must have mentioned that I wanted a divorce and brought both sets of parents here to act as mediators. Sure enough, just as I changed shoes and sat down in the living room, my father had the housekeeper take Annan to another room. I heard from Ryan that you want to divorce her. He said, "You're a grown man. You have a child already. Why are you bringing this up out of nowhere?" My father was the first to speak, his tone slightly stern, probably assuming I was at fault. Since the Liu family depended on the He family for support these years, they couldn't bring it up themselves. But once my father opened the conversation, Liu's mother also chimed in. "He Kong, when we entrusted Ryan to you, as her parents felt assured, we haven't heard of any major conflicts between you to these years. So why would you suddenly want a divorce? Is it that you've met someone unsuitable outside? He Kong, we're all men here. I can understand some things. But what you and Ryan have isn't just about romance. Marriage is about two families coming together. If there's anything, let's sit down and talk it out today. Divorce isn't a small matter. For the sake of the child, it shouldn't be brought up so casually." Liu's father added his voice to the conversation, claiming to understand, but his eyes were full of dissatisfaction. The only one who hadn't spoken was my mother, but even she was looking at me with disapproval. I didn't know what Liu Ryan had told them, but somehow both sets of parents were convinced that I was in the wrong. It seems this meal isn't going to happen. Initially, I thought we could part ways amicably, but at this moment, I suddenly didn't feel like sparing her dignity anymore. Just how much did my submissive behavior in the past inflate her confidence? To the point where she dared to bring both sets of parents here? Is she really not afraid that I might expose everything? Tell Liu Ryan to stop what she's doing and come out, I said. Let's all listen together to why I'm so set on divorcing her. Soon, Liu Ryan came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands. She was wearing a ginger-colored dress, the one I bought her when we first got married. Back when I gave it to her, she didn't like the color at all. In all these years, she hadn't worn it once, until today. Her attempt to make peace was shallow, easy to see through. Look, she actually knows what could make me happy and satisfied. But in the past 5 years, Liu Ryan hadn't done a single one of those things. It wasn't until I brought up divorce that she anxiously put on this dress, as if hinting at her willingness to give in. Yet she's still too proud, unable to bring herself to apologize, trying instead to use this indirect approach to give herself an out. In that moment, I felt a wave of irony, even a bit of irritation, in Liu Ryan's eyes. Am I really so foolish? So lacking in self-respect? I let out a self-deprecating laugh. One then took out the paternity test report, which I had flipped through countless times, and placed it on the coffee table. This is the reason I want a divorce. No amount of words could be as persuasive as a paternity test. The moment Liu Ryan saw the document and the words paternity test on the cover, all the color drained from her face. She looked up at me in disbelief, her lips trembling. When did you? Both sets of parents' faces changed too. The first to pick up the paternity report was my mother. She quickly flipped to the last page, and seeing the result, clutched her chest and sank back onto the sofa. The impact of the paternity report was explosive. Liu Ryan's parents didn't even dare to look at it. So, I don't think there's anything more to discuss. 5 years. I believe I've done more than enough, I said quietly. Then turned to Liu Ryan, whose face was ashen, barely able to stand. Sign the divorce papers. The sooner the better. If you truly care about Ann's well-being, you should take her back to her biological father. Liu Ryan was speechless. Liu's father, face livid, raised his hand and slapped her hard across the face. Tears instantly welled up in her eyes. Liu's mother, distressed, grabbed Liu's father's arm. Can't you talk this out without hitting her? What good does it do to hit her? Liu's father angrily shook off her hand. This is all because you spoiled her. She's done something so shameful, and you're still defending her. How could you face our in-laws like this? My mother was about to speak, but Liu's father's words shut her down. I stood up. The facts are clear now. Uncle Liu, take her and Annan and go back. If there's anything more to discuss, do it in private. I still need to explain this to my parents. He Kong, Liu's father's face looked tense, but I remained resolute. If you want to discipline your daughter, do it at home. No need to put on a show here. Liu Ryan stood there in shock, as if she couldn't believe things had come to this. Her father grabbed her roughly. Let's go. What are you still standing here for? Disgraceful. Liu's mother, too afraid to reason with her enraged husband, left with red eyes, holding Annan and following them out. In the end, we never had that meal. After I calmed my parents down, I returned home, only to find Liu Ryan sitting outside my door, hair disheveled. The moment I decided on divorce, I had changed the door code. She couldn't get in, so she waited there for me. When she heard my footsteps, she lifted her head to look at me. He Kong, are you satisfied now? My father never laid a hand on me from childhood until now. But because of you, he hit me for the first time. Liu Ryan slowly stood up, the ginger dress making her pale face look even whiter. Under the dim light of the hallway, I could clearly see the handprint on her face, and she looked quite pitiful. But what's the point of showing it to me? Did she expect me to feel sorry for her? I just found it all so ironic. I don't understand how you still have the nerve to come to me. In 5 years of marriage, this was the first time I'd spoken to her so harshly. It was clear that she couldn't take it. Her eyes reddening, I opened the door and went inside, but Liu Ryan tried to follow me, only for me to block her at the doorway. Sorry, I've already asked you for a divorce. This place isn't suitable for you anymore. She bit her lip. Do you really have to be this heartless? I looked at her and said seriously, you had another man's child, told the child about her real father, and the two of you kept me in the dark, playing me for a fool. So tell me, who's really being heartless here? Liu Ryan was speechless. I know you didn't marry me for love, but why couldn't you even give me the basic respect of loyalty? I don't understand why you're still here looking for me. Boda is back, and Annan already knows he's her biological father. I'm divorcing you, giving Boda his rightful place, so that the three of you can be a family. Isn't that what everyone wants? No, it's not like that. He Kong, listen to me. Let me explain. There's nothing to explain. I'll just ask you one question. Is Annan Boda's daughter? She looked mortified, but eventually she nodded gently. So, sign the divorce agreement quickly, or I'll take legal action. And don't blame me if the G family's reputation gets dragged down with it, I said coldly, then shut the door in her face. She texted me, I won't leave unless you're willing to hear me out, and then sat back down outside my door, feeling a surge of irritation. I wondered, what was she trying to achieve with this? Was she trying to win me back? How laughable. They say that affection that comes too late is worthless. Where was this sentiment before? I ignored her, retreating to my study to deal with my own affairs. It was late at night when the doorbell rang again. Outside, Liu Ryan was crying. He Kong, I know I was wrong. Please open the door. Just open it, won't you? I'll explain everything. I acted as if I hadn't heard a thing. He Kong, after all these years, can you really just let go like that? I don't believe it. Can't you give me just one more chance? I had never expected that the cold and composed Liu Ryan, who always seemed as distant as a mountain of ice, would lose her dignity, crying and breaking down outside my door. Even the residents' group chat had neighbors complaining. I thought for a moment, then directly called Boda. Come take Liu Ryan away. He arrived quickly, half coaxing, half dragging the tearful, reluctant Liu Ryan away. The next day, Boda arranged to meet with me. He was there to mediate on Liu Ryan's behalf. Sitting in the cafe, I stirred my drink lightly and let out a small scoff. I thought I had moved on. You two should reunite, Boda said with a faint, bitter smile. At least before that day in the hospital, before you arrived. That's what I thought as well. He started recounting his history with Liu Ryan. He had been a hardworking student from a small town, fighting tooth and nail to secure an opportunity to study abroad. She, on the other hand, was a privileged girl from a wealthy family, able to get whatever she wanted with a mere gesture. She didn't understand his anxieties about his uncertain future, yet she wasn't willing to stand in the way of his dreams. So they made a 5-year promise. He would return after 5 years. But in the 4th year, the Liu family faced a crisis, and Liu Ryan was forced to marry me. She was an idealistic girl when it came to love, he said, thinking that she had betrayed that love first. She's been blaming herself ever since, feeling guilty toward me. I let out a quiet laugh. So that's your excuse for having a fling with her? Leaving a child and expecting me to raise her? Boda's expression changed. No matter how noble, pure, or beautiful he tried to make that relationship sound, it couldn't hide the ugliness behind it. When I heard Liu Ryan tell Annan with her own lips that Boda was her real father, I carefully traced back the timeline. Annan was just over 4 years old, meaning she must have been conceived around the time of our wedding. The night before our wedding, Liu Ryan had gone out with her friends for a bachelorette party. She sent me a short video to reassure me. And in that video, Boda was there, My first formal meeting with Boda was actually at the wedding itself. Liu Ryan introduced him openly as her first love, even encouraging us to exchange WeChat contacts. After attending our wedding, Boda immediately flew back to the United States. Apart from congratulating me on Anan's birth and sending a red envelope on WeChat, we had virtually no interaction. It was precisely Liu Ryan's transparent attitude that prevented me from ever suspecting anything. Perhaps I'd hit a sore spot. As Boda took a defensive sip of his coffee, I suddenly asked him, "You clearly didn't want to be a mediator here, so why bother pretending and inviting me out?" A flash of discomfort crossed his face. "Because last night, Liu Ryan told me she realized she'd fallen in love with you." I paused, surprised. Only after filing for divorce did she suddenly realize she loved me. "Don't believe it," he asked, annoyed. "Do you think I enjoyed provoking you?" "It's because I noticed she's been mentioning you more often lately." "Oh," I replied sarcastically. "Her love is treating me with icy indifference daily, sneaking around behind my back, and expecting me to raise your child." I couldn't help but laugh. "Ryan has a strong sense of pride," he continued. "Maybe deep down," but he trailed off, unable to finish. "She couldn't accept that she'd betrayed her first love and fallen for you, so she used indifference as a mask whenever she was around you." I glanced at my watch, suddenly realizing how much time I was wasting. What was I doing here, listening to Boda's pleas for Liu Ryan? "Forget it," I said. "Tell Liu Ryan for me. Why should I settle for damaged goods? She's not worthy." Boda shot to his feet. "He Kong, you've gone too far." At that moment, a woman sitting at the table directly behind Boda, wearing a mask, stood up. It was Liu Ryan. Her face was pale, her eyes filled with tears. "He Kong," she whispered, "did you really call me damaged goods? Do you despise me that much? I know I made a terrible mistake all those years ago, but we've come so far since then. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive me? Just this once, for the sake of our past?" "Ryan," Boda said, "turn around and look at me. He Kong is degrading you like this. Why are you still pleading with him?" I nodded. "Yes, exactly. You finally have the chance to reunite with your first love, right? Ann can be with her real father too. So why are you trying to break that up?" Liu Ryan's tears flowed. Her voice choked. "In the end," she said, "it's all my fault. And Ann, if you don't want to accept her, fine, I'll make it up to you. We can have another child. I'll give you a new one." Boda looked at her in disbelief. "How can you say something like that? And Ann would be heartbroken if she heard this." I only felt disgust. "After finding out that you made me raise another man's daughter for 4 years, your idea of compensation is to have another child with me? Ha ha!" I couldn't help but laugh, both amused and bitter. I was truly at a loss for words. "Liu Ryan," I said, "face reality. I don't need you. You're not indispensable to me." Finally, a look of pain crossed her face. I turned to leave. "He Kong," she called after me. But Boda grabbed her arm firmly. "Ryan, let it go. You can see it now, can't you? The only one who's been unwaveringly in love with you is me." After Boda's plea to me, I completely lost hope that Liu Ryan would ever willingly sign the divorce papers. So I directly entrusted my lawyer to file for divorce through litigation. The scandal stirred up quite a storm, and the Liu family couldn't bear the public shame, eventually forcing Liu Ryan to sign the divorce papers. A month later, I finally received my divorce certificate. Liu Ryan came too. She had lost a lot of weight, and the prideful spark in her eyes was gone. As we walked out of the civil affairs office, she hesitated, then softly asked, "He Kong, could we have one last meal together?" I shook my head. "Forget it. Let's just act like strangers from now on." Biting her lip, she finally couldn't hold back her tears. I walked past her and got into my car. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Boda holding Ann's hand as they walked over to her. He wrapped her in his arms. What is Liu Ryan regretting now? When I devoted myself wholeheartedly to her, her heart was fully occupied with G Boder, believing that our marriage was a betrayal of her pure love. Now that I've cut off my feelings for her and am moving forward with a divorce, she suddenly can't let go of me, ignoring the steadfast presence of G Boder right beside her. Does Liu Ryan truly understand love? What she loves is merely an illusion in her own mind. In the past, it was G Boder. Now it's me. She will never learn to cherish the person in front of her. After the divorce, my mother started arranging blind dates for me again. I didn't mind, but finding a suitable partner for marriage wasn't easy. Meanwhile, when Liu Ryan heard I was dating, she started calling me late at night. When I picked up, she wouldn't say anything, just kept breathing on the other end. After a couple of these incidents, I simply blocked her number. 6 months later, I met Li Shuang, an executive from Yuli Group and a business partner. After dating for a few months, we decided to get married. Somehow, Liu Ryan found out about my engagement to Li Shuang, and she went hysterical, showing up late at night outside our new home, drunk and causing a scene. I was beyond annoyed and called G Boder to come take her away. Thankfully, Li Shuang was very understanding. Li Shuang knew all about the mess from my marriage with Liu Ryan, and she didn't dwell on it. After our wedding, I set aside some time to take Li Shuang on a honeymoon abroad. When we returned, G Boder, looking pale, came to see me. He said, Liu Ryan finally agreed to marry me. I nodded. Congratulations then, after all that waiting, you finally got what you wanted. He forced a smile. It's just that she only agreed out of spite after hearing that you went on a honeymoon with your new wife. I sighed. That's unnecessary. Even the one who has betrayed me has moved on. Why is Liu Ryan still holding on to all this? I patted G Boder's shoulder, seeing the confusion and uncertainty in his face about the future. All I could do was wish him luck. The next time I saw Liu Ryan was at the city hospital's obstetrics department. My wife was pregnant, and I was accompanying her for a checkup. We happened to run into G Boder and Liu Ryan. Liu Ryan was further along than us. Li Shuang was only 3 months in. While Liu Ryan was visibly showing, G Boder was carefully supporting her. But Liu Ryan's face no longer held that gentle look she used to have when looking at him. If you're so busy, she said, then just go be busy somewhere else. What's the point of making a scene while taking me to a checkup? Aren't you the father? Back when I was pregnant with Ann, he calm was always hearing my name brought up. At a time like this felt like terrible luck. So I quickly took my wife's hand and led her in the opposite direction. During the Lunar New Year, my mother casually mentioned that girl from the Liu family. She got together with her first love after all, but things don't seem to be going well. I saw her at the mall recently, visibly pregnant, with Ann in tow. Ann was causing a scene, whining and fussing. She ended up scolding and even hitting the child right in front of everyone. Ann cried her eyes out. TSK. It was heartbreaking to watch. After all, she was once our granddaughter for a few years, and I nearly went over to intervene. Don't be silly, I reminded her. Your real granddaughter is the one in your daughter-in-law's belly. She gave me a mock glare. You think I don't know that? Coincidentally, that evening, G Boder actually invited me out for drinks. I ignored his message, and while spending the night with my wife, my phone kept buzzing. Finally, I glanced at it and, unsurprisingly, it was G Boder, drunk and leaving me several voice messages. Isn't it easy to fall in love, but hard to stay together? I thought getting Ann and Ryan back meant we'd have a fresh start as a family. But why has it turned into this? Ryan doesn't understand my work at all. I'm a pediatrician with a demanding schedule, and she keeps comparing me to you, saying that you were just as busy, but somehow always found time to be with her when she needed you. In one message, he even started crying. Li Shuang overheard one of his messages and looked at me, surprised. You're still in touch with him? Jiboda was the third party, you know, Li Shuang remarked. And yet, here you are treating him like a friend. You're really forgiving. I calmly put my phone away, pulling her into my arms. Then she seemed to realize something. You didn't do all this on purpose, did you? I laughed. Why wouldn't I have done it on purpose? I deliberately didn't cut off contact with Jiboda, chatting with him occasionally, and subtly flaunting my happy relationship with Li Shuang. Over time, he began to realize that his marriage with Liu Ryan wasn't as idyllic as he'd hoped. Unlike me, Jiboda didn't have the same financial stability to support Liu Ryan. He had to rely on his own efforts to make ends meet. Originally, Jiboda was a highly regarded talent after returning from his studies in the US. Someone the hospital intended to cultivate, but he gave up many opportunities to care for Liu Ryan, and eventually the hospital started losing faith in him. Without strong backing, his career prospects dimmed. With the highest position he could hope for being a chief physician, he often confided in me, almost treating me like a close friend or confidant. Sometimes I couldn't help but find it amusing. He even told me about the struggles of handling Liu Ryan's pregnancy alone, leading him to bring his parents from his hometown to help out. But with his parents now living close by, the usual friction between in-laws started. Back when Liu Ryan was my wife, though my mother wasn't thrilled with her cold demeanor. She never openly criticized her. Now, with their lives in shambles, naturally, I feel a bit of satisfaction. Seeing her in this situation genuinely makes me happy. Call me petty if you want. But for someone like Liu Ryan, who always wanted more, from the moment she pinned Annan's paternity on me, she should have been prepared for consequences. As for Jiboda, he isn't exactly innocent either. What kind of person would rekindle things with his ex-girlfriend the night before her wedding? He knew perfectly well that Annan was his child, and yet he enjoyed sharing the joke with Liu Ryan at my expense. So why shouldn't I now enjoy watching him and Liu Ryan struggle? Li Shuang laughed. You really put on this magnanimous front, but you had everyone fooled. Even my mom says you're a perfect match for me, maybe that's why. After the new year, Li Shuang gave birth to a pair of twins. Around the same time, I heard from Jiboda that Liu Ryan hadn't gone through with the pregnancy. On New Year's Eve, she had a huge argument with Jiboda's mother, stormed back to her parents' house, and without a word went to a private hospital and had the nearly 7-month-old fetus aborted. She even packaged the remains and sent them to Jiboda's parents. His mother reportedly fainted on the spot, and when she came to, she demanded that Jiboda divorce Liu Ryan. Now, they're tangled in a messy divorce process. The Liu family isn't easy to deal with either. They hired people to go to the city hospital where Jiboda worked, causing enough trouble that he had to take a leave of absence. Their lives are now utterly fractured. I sent him a new family photo of mine, then removed him from my contacts. Seeing them in such a miserable state, I finally felt a sense of relief. At last, that weight on my chest was lifted. The end.